In case you couldn't tell by my outfit, I just got back from watching Oppenheimer. Actually, I just got back from watching Barbie and Oppenheimer, the whole Barbenheimer deal, and I'm here to tell you what I think. I'd like to get started by talking a little bit about the overall experience of the whole Barbenheimer, film event that happened, um, because it's unlike anything I've ever experienced. Honestly, this is the first time I've ever gone to like a double feature type of thing. I've never watched two movies at a cinema in the same day. I've definitely watched two movies in one day, but never like at a movie theater, which is unlike me because I'm a film bro. So I think what I really enjoyed overall was the fact that everybody, and I mean almost literally everybody that was in the theater today, they were wearing what I'm wearing, which is hot pink and very Barbie-like colors, which was so fun to experience. And as a filmmaker, I mean, hell, if I was Greta Gerwig, I would be so proud of the movie that I made, just because I'm able to draw in audiences who feel a sense of community. So I think that's my biggest takeaway from the Barbie experience was the fact that everybody played the role and everybody was there for the excitement. Nobody really cared if the movie was good or bad, but everybody was there because we were having fun. And then on top of that, Oppenheimer, everybody was excited for. Everybody, I think, knows that, it's Christopher Nolan, so obviously it's going to be worth watching. Everybody was there for it, and I really, really appreciate, everybody that went just for that. With that said, let's talk about Barbie. When I went to watch the Barbie movie, I was pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed the movie. I was a little bit skeptical. I was a little bit worried. As a filmmaker, one of my biggest fears, I think, is touching any sort of IP that is well known. I'd be really worried because you're expected to make something that's compelling and that adds to, the authenticity of what makes this a household name. And I think the Barbie movie absolutely nails it on the head. Like, let's get that out of the way. It's for what it's meant to be, it surpasses any expectations that I had. It's relevant. It uses a lot of pop culture references, tastefully, I may add. In some cases, I don't think the whole Zack Snyder joke that they added needed to be there, but I digress. It's very well made and very well crafted. Some of the biggest ups for this movie are the way that the set is built. I felt that the set and the style, so the production design in general and the art direction, I think is phenomenal for this movie. And it's very, very new, if I dare to say. It was like, it has the same effect that the Lego movie had when it first came out, where they took something to its roots, so rather than doing like the flexy Lego animations, they did like a stop motion type look. They did something very similar with this, where like all the movements of the characters in Barbie Land moved and felt like, the Barbie dolls. And the whole set were decorated the way that, Barbie toys are made, the same colors as expected. Even the props that they used felt so much like the authentic Barbie props, I guess. But I thought that was really a brilliant choice, and I think that like it really plays to like the whole playfulness of the whole movie without it missing a beat. I think that hands down, it's very, very creative. It felt very much like, and this is a weird reference, but it felt like Beau is Afraid. If you have seen that movie, then you know what I'm talking about, because I'm talking about, the whole theater sequence that he goes through. It's very like paper cutout-ish, plays like a play, very playful. The transitions were really well done, anything like that. It was really, really well done. Aside from that, the story itself I thought was quite strong. There's a few things that like I felt were a little unresolved, and a few topics that were brought in that I felt were sort of left lingering now that I'm thinking more about it. But without giving any spoilers, the characters go through arcs. Some characters better than others, I will say, and I will get to that in a second. But On top of that, I also think that there was a lot of heart to the story. This plays very much into like feminism and, being up against the patriarchy and stuff like that, which were topics that I sort of like predicted coming into this movie. Um, but it's played quite tastefully, I will say. It is quite tasteful. It's not forced. Um, and the way that Barbie develops throughout this story, I found myself tearing up towards the end, which was a complete surprise because that did not happen when I watched Oppenheimer, and that seems counterintuitive to me. I don't know. It does a good job of balancing, the feminism with the equality by strengthening the women of the story whilst also being equal to their male counterpart, without it seeming like one has to put the other one down in order to be better. It does really good job at like balancing the odds and saying, this is how it should be. And that's all I can say about that. That's how it should be. All of that would not be what it is without the incredible acting of both Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, who absolutely kills it as Ken. He is hilarious throughout the entire movie. I was laughing at Ken, which he is sort of like the jokey character who has some development there that's pretty interesting, but I won't spoil. But definitely one of my favorite characters, both Barbie and Ken, hands down. With that being said, I felt like not everybody was the best casting. I felt Will Ferrell as the CEO was a little bit too goofy, which I get why they went in that direction. The main antagonist is supposed to be the big corporation Mattel, who also made the movie. So they can't actually be the bad guys, right? So the whole time Mattel is the bad guys, but at the same time, they're also like goofy and silly and quirky. So that's something. But aside from that, I really felt like the mother and the daughter characters who interact with Barbie in the real world, I thought that their sort of character arcs were a little bit messier. They have like an arc. I felt like it was a very steep arc. Like they just sort of changed too quickly. There was not enough to develop them. While I do like their dynamic, I do not like their characters individually. I felt like while political correctness was like a big topic in this movie, I felt like it was Twitter levels of political correctness, if that makes sense. Like there was just no room for any sort of edge, if that makes sense. Everything was just perfectly round, and that's the best I can like describe their characters. Their dialogue was not the strongest in my opinion. I felt like there was too many things that they tried to fit into one character that didn't quite land all the way, especially with how their character arcs play out. I felt like a lot of their initial intentions sort of get lost and muddied along the way. But yeah, overall, I really, really enjoyed the Barbie movie. I would say that it was definitely like a 4 out of 5 stars for me. The only thing that really brought it down was some of the acting and a little bit of the character development. But aside from that, I really, really enjoyed it. And again, the experience overall was very fun. With that said, here are my thoughts on Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer feels like one of Christopher Nolan's most tight-knit stories. And that's saying something, because he is very good at making stories that are, just holistically intertwined. And no matter how messy it gets and how, like, out of place they may seem, they always tie back somehow. And this is no exception. Upon, first glance, every shot of this movie is beautiful. Like, not a single one lets you down. And I feel like that is probably one of Nolan's strengths for this movie. It's just how gorgeous they film this. The black and white sequences are beautiful. And I think that now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of like the lighting, like coming in from windows and stuff like that, was like blown out, you know, like there's just like the very peaking highlights and stuff like that coming in from windows and stuff, even for like the colored sections versus like the black and white sections of the movie. um Everything was just very bloomy and stuff, which I feel now is probably directly related to the whole nuclear explosion type thing with like the blown out uh, highlights and stuff. The explosions that were practical looked gorgeous. Like they were beautiful. Everything just beautiful all throughout. I'm not typically big on his war films or war films in general for that matter, but the fact that this is so grounded on just the one character, Oppenheimer, and rather than showing, you know, that side of the war, it's more like, you know, the conversations and the politics behind it. I was a sucker for all of it, and I felt myself glued to the screen for all 3 hours that that movie was playing. The only real downsides that I have for Oppenheimer are the length of the movie, because 3 hours is a lot, and it's a bit of a slow burn. I personally don't think that it can be cut down, because again, I was engaged throughout the entire thing, and I felt like really connecting with every line of dialogue that was said. But again, it is a slow burn, and because of that, it makes it really hard to be rewatched. So in terms of rewatchability, I wouldn't really rate it that high. But as a cinema experience, I think it's a phenomenal one, and definitely something that is worth watching in theaters. So I highly recommend you to watch in theaters if possible. Overall, I would rate Oppenheimer a 4.5 out of 5. I did enjoy it slightly more than I enjoyed Barbie, although it was literally by 0.5 stars, which is not a lot. So if I were to recommend this to anybody, definitely, you know, wake up, black coffee and a cigar, Oppenheimer, then brunch and mimosas, then the Barbie movie, and then hit the clubs. That's my recommendation, and I hope that that helps and that you enjoy the movies. Let me know what you think about the movies. I would love to have a conversation down in the comments. And if you would like to watch more of our reviews, you can click on this playlist right here, where you will find other members of Somelikeit Studios telling you about their experiences watching certain movies that just came out, and I highly recommend them. Also, if I had a penny for every time Will Ferrell played an evil character in a movie about plastic figures, I'd have 2 pennies, which isn't much, but it's strange that it's happened twice.